Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
The following program is sponsored by Max Out Savings Advisors. The views expressed during the broadcast are solely for entertainment purposes and do not necessarily express the views of KNTH, its management, Max Out Savings Advisors, or its sponsors. Max Out Savings Advisors and members of the Max Out Savings team may or may not hold securities mentioned during the show. Plan for your prosperity, prepare for your retirement, safeguard your savings, and nurture your investments. This is the Max Out Savings Show with Ted Gioka, a presentation of Max Out Savings Advisors. Now, here's your host from Max Out Savings Advisors, Ted Gioka.
Welcome to the Max Out Savings Show. I'm Ted Gioka, and we're talking savings investments in your retirement here on our show. Our show is all about saving money and building up wealth in the world today. Our motto and our philosophy is to save aggressively and invest conservatively. That's save aggressively and invest conservatively. That's the key to building up wealth. You put away as much money as you can in your tax-free programs. You get a tax deduction. They grow tax-free, and then you take the money out when you retire and you build up wealth. You use the power of compounding of money tax-free. And so we always want to start the show talking about that to encourage you to save money, to build up wealth, and to understand the world. That's the key to building up wealth over the long term. We got a lot to talk about on the show today. We always try to bring you the trends happening in the world. We try to give you a different spin on what we're seeing that you're not hearing elsewhere, so you can really understand things. Oftentimes today, the mainstream media just picks up a narrative and runs with it, and it's clearly wrong. And we try to point these things out to you. We try to help you understand, what it takes to retire successfully, how to get there. And it always starts out by going to your 401k, your savings programs, putting away a minimum of 10% plus a company match to get you up where you need to be over time. It's called income-based savings, and it simply means if you're making $30,000, $300,000, you're going to be putting away enough income for your retirement. And so in addition, you get your tax deduction from the government as well, and plus you get tax-free growth for the next 20, 25 years that you work. So, first take charge of your retirement. Look at where you are. See how much you're saving. If you're not there, now's the time to boost up that savings and move forward. And then conservatively manage the money. Remember, save aggressively, conservatively manage the money. And typically, if you look at the power of the compounding of interest, it is just gigantic. It's more slow and steady. The same thing over time, rather than jumping around all over the place. You steadily build up wealth over the time, and you try to minimize your mistakes and maximize your returns. And that's the key to building up wealth and understand the world today. So, that's the first step. And then, so where we are today, we've got to move the manufacturing back to the United States to increase the revenue to the United States. These are big changes. It's caused disruptions around the world. It's in the best interest of the United States. We've had a war with Russia going on in Ukraine. We have a war with Israel and Iran. And it just seems like it's just, the road goes on forever and the party never ends. And yet here we are. We had almost an 18% correction in the market since the top in mid-February, and then it had the fastest comeback from around a 15% decline from where it happened real quickly up in history. And so it's an incredibly volatile market, but it presents big opportunities. And so you want to take advantage of those opportunities, and you want to understand the world today. Now, one of the things we want to take a look at is, let's take a look at at President Trump's one big beautiful bill that passed here over the July 4th. And there's a lot of changes in it. I want to kind of run through some of the changes so you can understand, what we're looking at. And a couple things. The first thing it does is it keeps the individual tax rates from 2017 that were put in place, the Trump tax cuts. there was a cliff that these things were set to expire and taxes were going to go up on everybody. And so what that did is it basically froze those things in place. It increased the child credit from $2,000 to $2,200 on that. It increased the standard deduction to $31,500. One thing it did, it also, if you're a joint filer, if you take that standard deduction, you can take off $2,000 for charitable contributions, which is a good thing because a lot of people just don't want to mess with everything. They just take the standard deduction. But this way, it kind of encourages people to give money to their church or to groups in need. And this is one way you can get it off your taxes. There's some other provisions in here as well. And one of the things that we've talked about on the Max Out Savings Show for years, our focus is really on retirees, people retiring. But we've been saying is for wealthier people, we get all types of questions on this. I get Ted, are we going to sit there? Are we going to see what's going to happen to my Social Security? I know it's not going to be there, or my Medicare. And my answer has always been it will be there, but where it won't be is going to be for wealthier people. They're going to have to pay more taxes. They're going to get their benefits taxed or cut. And this is and I've emphasized the importance of, if you're a retiree, you don't want to have $2.5 million in your qualified plans, your IRA rollover, your pension rollover, whatever, and then have $15,000-$20,000 in the bank in just a regular non-qualified account. So if you have a need if you want to buy a car, a sudden medical expense, buy a piece of property, help out your children or whatever, you have to pull it out of a qualified plan, and your tax rates jump up, because then it'll affect your Medicare and it'll affect other things. Well, we're starting to see this happen. I mean, we have $2 trillion deficits for the last 5 years. Deficit to GDPs, with the exception of 1 year, were over 6.5%. And even the 1 year, I think it was 5 something, and then another year at the beginning of COVID, it was about 9, or it was just very high. So the U.S. government's finances are under strain, and so what we're seeing is this. We're starting to see this happen, and let's run through some of the bills so you can understand what we're talking about and the importance of managing your income at retirement. No tax on tips, $25,000. Overtime, no tax on overtime of $12,500 to $25,000 if it's joint. You get that much, but it cuts out at $150,000 to $300,000. If it's a joint, it's at $300,000. So if you're making $300,000, you have to pay the taxes on the overtime. The same thing with the tips. If you're a single person, you make over $150,000, you don't get the tax-free tips. And so this is something. There's a $6,000 bonus for seniors, a $6,000 deduction. So they give you another $6,000 deduction to help you with your Social Security, make it tax-free. Well, that phases out at $75,000 if you're a single person, and if you're married, $150,000. So there's 3 instances where if you're making reasonably good, and quite frankly, $75,000 if you're single, it's not rolling in the money, where you're going to lose the deductions, you're going to lose the no tax on tips, you're going to lose the no tax on overtime. And this is something that we've been talking about. And so when it comes to planning for retirement, you want to make sure you have a Roth. You want to make sure you have money in a regular account that when time comes up to buy that new car or truck, and you take out $40,000 or $50,000 or more out of your account, you're not taking it out of your IRA and stacking $50,000 on top of your income, and all of a sudden you start triggering all these other, it changes your cost of your Medicare. All of a sudden you lose your $6,000 deduction. So planning for more wealthy retirees is going to be more important than ever. And this I mean, I've talked about this for at least a decade, and it's really starting to come true. And we're really seeing it in the big, beautiful bill. Overall, and so how do you handle that? And again, is if you can sit there and move, have that Roth IRA that you can take money out tax free, or have a regular account that you can sit there and take some money out if you need it. Those type of things are very helpful. In some cases, if you have that $2.5 million IRA, you've got $20,000. You might want to consider taking a portion of your IRA, converting it to a Roth. It doesn't have to be a huge amount, but just so you have that money, you have that pool available to pull from in case sudden financial emergencies come up that don't increase your tax rates and then throw all types of benefit. You lose a lot of benefits because of your income. So that's something I think it's real important, and we've been saying this, and now you're really starting to see it. A couple of things. There's $1,000 savings account that's going to be set up for people, babies that are just born, which is, I think that's good to start them out. Again, the problem with a lot of people is they start out with just no money, and it's a good idea to start them out with something. So maybe the time money can grow and it can be used for college or to purchase a home, 20, 30, 20, 25 years in the future. And so that's a good thing. The SALT cap went up to $40,000, but again, you have to make under $500,000, that's a good amount of money. They're also expensive, permanent, 100% expensing for R&D and short-term investments. There's also, I think, 100% on more manufacturing equipment. Again, this is, hey, we want manufacturing in the United States. We want to be able to get people to get a deduction. And it's really fascinating because small companies, they love 100% deduction. This is, oh, wait, you mean I can deduct this? I don't pay any taxes. Did you make any money? Oh, no, I didn't make any money, because they made a big investment and they don't pay taxes. Well, the bigger, U.S. corporations, the problem they run into is they're so desperate for earnings that to keep their PEs up. And I think this is something that's really hurt a lot of the manufacturing in the United States, is because a lot of these people went manufacturing light. Therefore, they could boost up their earnings, and they wouldn't have to pay for the equipment, and it was off their books, and they had better earnings and better margins. But in the end, it weakened the companies. And I think this is something that we're going to kind of continue to really I think we're really working through this. There's an incredible – look, one of the things we're looking at is there's these massive – vital forces moving back and forth in the United States and the world today. It's wars in Ukraine, wars in the Middle East, it's $37 trillion deficits, it's China stealing all our manufacturing, it's the European manufacturing basically in the state of complete collapse. They're raising their energy cost up because they didn't like oil and gas, and they had cheap gas from Russia, and they couldn't stand it, and they got mad at the Russians, and rather than trying to figure out a way out of the problem, it was better you get rid of oil and gas, and then you stop CO2 and you save the planet. And so these huge changes, the deficits in the United States, immigration is out of control. All of these things, these are massive, massive changes swinging back and forth in the world today. And so in that world, you really want to sit there and kind of you have to sort of manage through it, but what we're seeing happening is it's affecting corporations, and this is the area we're going. One of the big look, China. If people say, what about Trump's program? If you go look at China arguably is the most successful country in the world in the last 30 years. What did they do? They went and stole all our technology. We had 20 years ago, I had clients, Ted, I won't use any names, but big chemical plant, put we put the plant right in China, and then 18 months later, there's an identical one 7 miles down the road stealing all our technology. They stole our technology. They moved all the manufacturing overseas. It was a great deal for corporate America, and we lost millions of jobs. China had pretty much 5-6% growth rates for 25, 30 years with virtually no slowdown whatsoever because they brought out that manufacturing. What if we bring a lot of that, not all of it, but bring a big chunk of our manufacturing back to the United States? That could mean that we could have a good long-term growth path. And I think that's really what President Trump is aiming for. And so, but these are all massive, massive changes. We're trying to restructure the debt. We're using tariffs to fund part of our growth. We're forcing companies back here. We're dealing with wars. We had to cut the Ukrainians off of a lot of the munitions we're giving them because our military said, look, Mr. President, we're at critical levels. If someone attacks us, we can't defend ourselves because we've given so much weapons to the Ukraine. These are all big issues. And by the way, that didn't crop up. We talked about this on the Max Out Savings Show 2 years ago, pointing out what was going to happen, and here we are. So all of these big changes, this huge cauldron is moving things around in the world, and it's shaping the investment environment. We're going to talk about that after this quick break right here on the Max Out Savings Show.
Savings Show with Ted Gioka is taking your calls now at 713-339-1070. Ted Gioka will return after these messages.
Hi, this is Ted Gioka of the Max Out Savings Show. Our motto and philosophy is to save aggressively and invest conservatively. The world is changing at a faster rate than any time in the last 50 years. The investment world has changed. Have you changed? Inflation will destroy your retirement. It is a different world that requires different strategies and ideas. The era of indexing and investing is over. If you need help, listen to the Max Out Savings Show. Our show airs every Saturday at 10 a.m. and Sunday at 7 a.m. We talk about investments, the world, and where the world is going today, and help you understand it and help you save money and build up wealth. It's the Max Out Savings Show. And if you need some help, go to our website, maxoutsavings.com. That's maxoutsavings.com. On the website, you can sign up for the free Max Out Savings Report. Our report covers all types of these big issues, the changes in the world, and helps you understand and protect your retirement. So go to the website, maxoutsavings.com.
Hey everybody, Charlie Kirk here. Ted Gioka, the founder of Max Out Savings Advisors, always says, save aggressively and invest conservatively. He specializes in helping people grow their retirement account with as little risks as possible. Ted combines working knowledge with the intuition gained from over 25 years of experience of value investing in the stock and bond markets for retirement accounts. Like you, Ted is deeply conservative in life and in his investment approach. His risk strategy allows him to anticipate market downswings to protect your money. Ted is also the conservative host of the Max Out Savings Show. You can listen to him every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. right here on The Answer. If the idea of saving aggressively and investing conservatively appeals to you, the best way to get to know Ted is to call him. The number is 713-627-0400 or visit maxoutsavings.com. That is maxoutsavings.com. Call Ted right now, 713-627-0400 or visit maxoutsavings.com.
Hi, I'm Sam Malone, the owner of Houston's cutting-edge media company called 512 New Media. At 512 New Media, we create amazing videos that companies use on their websites, telling their story in bold colors with exciting animation and graphics. At 512 New Media, we also shoot television commercials and instructional videos. And if you want to show off your business from the air, we're ready to go with our drone video aircraft.
In the 1970s, the big song was the Bee Gees' Stayed Alive. Well, it was difficult back then to stay alive if you were a retiree. Inflation was running rampant, and since then, over the last 25 years, it's gone away. Well, inflation's coming back, and it's going to endanger your retirement. If you're a retiree, inflation is your biggest enemy. Hi, this is Ted Gioka of the Max Out Savings Show. If you need help with your retirement, I'd like to help you out. Go to maxoutsavings.com. That's maxoutsavings.com, and we'll show you how you manage through inflation. Don't let inflation destroy your retirement.
We return now to the Max Out Savings Show. Here's Ted Gioka.
Welcome back to the Max Out Savings Show. A couple things. We want to talk about one of our sponsors, Rangoni Alto Gin. It's a fine crafted botanical gin, all organic from the Italian Alps. They use only the finest products in the world to put together a botanical gin that is superior to anything else out there in the market. So if you get a chance, try it. It's Rangoni Alto Gin. You can get it at Specs or Total Wine. Look for the kingfisher bird on the label, Rangoni Alto Gin. Now then, talking savings investments, so here we are. In the world today, we're dealing with these big issues. We have as we talked about, we have wars, we have the tariffs, we have the deficits, runaway deficits. We're running 6% deficits. Now we have the big, beautiful bill. This is designed to help grow the economy. And what Trump and Secretary Bissett has come up with of Treasury is that, look, we're going to have. He goes, there's two ways we can either cut spending all over the place, which is 6% of GDP. We got to get it down 3%, or we can try to grow the economy. And so we can try to grow the economy. We'll get funds coming in from tariffs. We'll cut, 150, 200 billion from expenses, and if we can cut the interest rates, that's kind of the plan that they've come up with. And so I believe it's a good plan. And part of it is the big beautiful bill where they've encouraged. There's a number of expensing for new factories to come in. 100%. There's tax advantages as well on that. And so all of these things are put in place to try to sit there and grow the economy. Another interesting thing that's in the one big beautiful bill is a 1% tax on remittances. There's billions of dollars of money goes to particularly Mexico and other countries around the world, and to support those countries. And so again, we're picking up more money. We're able to sit there and pick up more income by doing this. Now, interestingly, this could likely help crypto, because the question is, do they sit there and go buy crypto, and then somebody down in El Salvador or Mexico has a crypto account down there and they just transfer the money this way? And I think this is going to be one of the interesting things out there with that. And that could be one of the reasons why Bitcoin hit a new high in here. Taxes on college endowments. This is another thing. I saw a thing on X here this morning. People are tired of these colleges. He was talking about. He goes, look, I was a smart kid from Wisconsin, but if some smart kid in Wisconsin thinks he's going to get ahead and go to one of these schools, quite frankly, he's kidding himself, because he said about 25, 30, 40 years ago, they had maybe 3 or 4%. I think he used 2 or 3, but say 3 or maybe 3.5% of the kids in college were from another country. I remember when I was at A&M. I mean, one of the guys in the class, I think he ultimately went on to become energy ministry of Saudi Arabia, but there weren't that many of them there at all. He said some of these schools have 30, 40%, 25, 30, in some cases more percent of the kids are foreign students, which are having to compete with American kids, and so. And this is all this DEI stuff, and so people are upset. So one of the things they're doing is they're putting some taxes on these endowments. These schools are all running around building up massive endowments. The money should be going to the kids, and it should be going to American kids. People, aren't investing, in their colleges they went to because they want some child from another country to go there. I mean, it's as simple as that. And so I think that's going to be a big change there. The other thing is, interesting thing is they defunded Planned Parenthood, or part of it, but don't worry, a federal judge has already rushed in to say Planned Parenthood, we don't want to stop killing babies, and which is just, again, it just shows you the what just the abject corruption that has crept into our federal judgeships in the United States that hadn't been there for 200-something years. But we're spending $175 billion on immigrant enforcement. I'm not sure I would put that much money in that. I mean, look, believe me, I want to get rid of these immigrants, but my big deal is really I want to see cuts in spending. I want to see this. I want to see things under control, spending under control, because it's so important for the future of our country to get this deficit under control. Now, the other thing that is look, this situation with the Federal Reserve is starting to come to a head here. And a couple thoughts on it. The Federal Reserve, a lot of those guys bought into the modern monetary theory put forth by Stephanie Kelton, professor at Harvard University, which simply said, look, if you control the world, if you control the world's currency, so to speak, and you have the dominant currency, you really don't have to worry about borrowing money, and you can actually borrow as much money as you want. And so the Biden administration, we came out of 2020. Donald Trump had to spend enormous amounts of money because we foolishly shut the whole country down in panic, and we poured trillions of dollars into the economy. Well, interest rates didn't go up a whole lot, and then Biden figured, hey, wow, if we can spend this money, let's just keep spending it. So they cut back a little bit, but they were spending 9.5%, 10% of GDP, and so they cut it back to 6%. And they just kept spending the money. And the Federal Reserve sat there and didn't say a word. The inflation took off, and they said, this is transitory. It's not going away. Well, all you had to do was look at the amount of money pouring into the system, and it wasn't going to be transitory because there's only so many goods. And if you sit there and increase the money supply 20%, you're going to get, there's only so many places it can go, and so they're going to be chasing the same goods, and the price of everything from airline tickets to food went up, and so they stayed up. And so then President Biden and the people around him kept spending the money, 6.5% of GDP a year. Typically, it's been 3% or so. That's a big difference. And the Fed didn't say anything. The Fed would meet with Congress. And some Republican asked them, Fed Chairman Powell, what do you think of the excess spending? Our deficit, we're spending 6.5% of GDP. Is that going to hurt? Well, that's not our area of expertise. Well, go tell that to Paul Volcker when Paul Volcker trotted up to Congress, and those people were afraid to ask Chairman Paul Volcker back in the 70s and 80s. They were afraid to ask him a question. I mean, he would just blow on those guys, and he'd say, you guys are spending money recklessly. You're going to destroy. We have inflation. What have you done? And they were cowed by him. Instead, they got Powell, and they convinced Powell never to say a word. And the Federal Reserve sat by as we recklessly increased our deficits. Under Biden, it went. I want to say it went up about 28%. The debt went up 28% in 4 years. They didn't say a word about it. And then, right before the election, he cut interest rates 50 basis points a month and a half before the election, month and a half before the election, all the time claiming he's apolitical. And now President Trump is going, look, I've got to refinance. Keep in mind, we have the big story here is that the one big, beautiful bill that we're talking about, the big thing in that bill was raising the debt limit. And so now they can start. So since January about 21st, the United States government hasn't borrowed any additional debt. They've refinanced some debt, but they can't borrow anymore. Now they're going to start borrowing it. So he's got to refinance about $9 trillion. And so he goes, well, the Fed should cut the short-term rates. The Federal Reserve has a very hard time controlling long-term rates, but they typically can control short-term rates. And so the Fed's like, look, it's not our responsibility to sit there and help the U.S. government finance their debt. Well, I guess it wasn't your responsibility either when you recklessly let the federal government run this massive amount of debt up, and you took on a huge amount of that debt on your balance sheet, and now all of a sudden you have no responsibility. And the other thing is, and they do have a responsibility for the stability of the United States of America. And if our deficits keep skyrocketing, our financial and interest rates start going up, the world loses confidence. Our financial system will destabilize, and the United States will end up like Argentina. And that's the way we're going unless this stabilizes. And so what can you do in this situation? Well, I think one Commerce Secretary Economic Advisor Hassett, whatever his name, he made some comments today, and this is something we've been looking at. Is if you look around the world, the United States short-term debt is one of the higher places in the world. The Europeans have much lower interest rates than we do, and typically the U.S. and Europe are about the same. You know, they kind of go back and forth a little bit, but our debt right now is a real outlier with the Fed funds close to 4%. That compared to the European, and they really should be about 150 basis points lower. Now, yes, our economy is doing well, and the Fed is going, but look, we have tariffs, and tariffs are going to cause inflation, so we can't cut rates. Well, these are the same people that said inflation was transitory, said it didn't make any difference no matter how much the Biden administration spends at 6% negative GDP deficits per year, made no difference, are suddenly now claiming that they know about they've been wrong about everything. And so why this is important, and thing to understand, this is a little complicated issue, is if you say $9 trillion, let's say $10 trillion they have to refinance, and let's say they do $10 trillion over the next year short term. If just for mathematic purposes, it'll be less than that. But at $10 trillion at 1.5%, that difference that works out to be $150 billion a year. Wait, is that right? Okay, so for every $1 trillion at 1% is $100 billion. So it's $150 billion. So it starts adding up. And keep in mind, we have a total of $37 trillion worth of debt. And so if you can get $150 billion savings or more from interest, and possibly a lot more than that, could be double that. Plus you get $300 billion for tariffs. That's $450 billion. Plus you save $200 billion for, let's say on different things. That's $650 billion. And plus if you get some more income, all of a sudden you've knocked $1 trillion off of your deficits, which stabilizes the whole financial system. And that's really what we're after here. This is why you're seeing so much pressure put on Chairman Powell. There's more. Look, I think something's going to happen sooner rather than later with him. I think clearly that we have a July meeting coming up, and the question is, are they going to cut rates? And the Fed says they're data dependent. Okay, fine. The tariffs have been in place. Honestly, inflation really hasn't gone up. Why don't you cut rates 50 basis points and say if it comes back, we're going to raise them back up? That would be being data dependent. And so this is the big battle. Remember, we have a triad of what Trump is trying to do: growth in manufacturing, cut spending, and actually a quadriad, cut spending, get more income coming in through tariffs, and then cut the interest rates. And everything, all three of those four are working and actually doing pretty well. The fourth one is the Fed, which is just being obstinate because it's become political. So that's going to be the big battle. And the other thing that's going to be important to watch here is, we just said, $9 trillion worth of borrowing and refinancing. There's an additional probably $2 trillion they're going to have to borrow additional money here. What's it going to do to interest rates? Interest rates are starting to go up. Markets are watching. So this is going to be something that's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And tell what, I'm up against a break here. Stick with us. We'll be right back right here on the Max Out Savings Show and give you some idea of some big things happening in the markets and where do we go from here.
Savings and investment questions? Ted Gioka has answers. Call the Max Out Savings Show now at 713-339-1070. We'll be right back.
Hi, this is Ted Gioka of the Max Out Savings Show. Our motto and philosophy is to save aggressively and invest conservatively. The world is changing at a faster rate than any time in the last 50 years. The investment world has changed. Have you changed? Inflation will destroy your retirement. It is a different world that requires different strategies and ideas. The era of indexing and investing is over. If you need help, listen to the Max Out Savings Show. Our show airs every Saturday at 10 a.m. and Sunday at 7 a.m. We talk about investments, the world, and where the world is going today, and help you understand it and help you save money and build up wealth. It's the Max Out Savings Show. And if you need some help, go to our website, maxoutsavings.com. That's maxoutsavings.com. On the website, you can sign up for the free Max Out Savings Report. Our report covers all types of these big issues, the changes in the world, and helps you understand and protect your retirement. So go to the website, maxoutsavings.com.
Hi, I'm Sam Malone, the owner of Houston's cutting-edge media company called 512 New Media. At 512 New Media, we create amazing videos that companies use on their websites, telling their story in bold colors with exciting animation and graphics. At 512 New Media, we also shoot television commercials and instructional videos. And if you want to show off your business from the air, we're ready to go with our drone video aircraft. Let us help you create your media message. We're online at 512newmedia.com or call 281-822-8803. 512 New Media is Houston's only media creation and distribution company that's actually owned by someone who's currently on the air. And that gives us an incredible edge when creating content for consumers to use on their laptops, tablets, and smartphones. Standing by to create your message, we're 512 New Media, 512newmedia.com.
Hey everybody, Charlie Kirk here. Ted Gioka, the founder of Max Out Savings Advisors, always says, save aggressively and invest conservatively. He specializes in helping people grow their retirement account with as little risks as possible. Ted combines working knowledge with the intuition gained from over 25 years of experience of value investing in the stock and bond markets for retirement accounts. Like you, Ted is deeply conservative in life and in his investment approach. His risk strategy allows him to anticipate market downswings to protect your money. Ted is also the conservative host of the Max Out Savings Show. You can listen to him every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. right here on The Answer. If the idea of saving aggressively and investing conservatively appeals to you, the best way to get to know Ted is to call him. The number is 713-627-0400 or visit maxoutsavings.com. That is maxoutsavings.com. Call Ted right now, 713-627-0400 or visit maxoutsavings.com.
In the 1970s, the big song was the Bee Gees' Staying Alive. Well, it was difficult back then to stay alive if you were a retiree. Inflation was running rampant, and since then, over the last 25 years, it's gone away. Well, inflation's coming back, and it's going to endanger your retirement. If you're a retiree, inflation is your biggest enemy. Hi, this is Ted Gioka of the Max Out Savings Show. If you need help with your retirement, I'd like to help you out. Go to maxoutsavings.com. That's maxoutsavings.com, and we'll show you how you manage through inflation. Don't let inflation destroy your retirement.
And now, more of the Max Out Savings Show with Ted Gioka.
Welcome back to the Max Out Savings Show. I'm Ted Gioka, and we're talking savings, investments, in your retirement. If you got any questions or comments, you can give us a call at 713-339-1070. A couple things here. The gold and silver continue to move higher, and gold hit a new high silver hit a new high of $38.32, and this is clearly a breakout. And this is something we've been talking about. We've really felt like this year, silver, gold were going to be the best performing asset classes, and I think we're really seeing that. We're seeing a breakout there. I've been really. If you look at silver, it started out the year at $24. It's at $38. Again, it's this general thing with metals, and in general, if you look at copper, copper started the year out at $3.80, and it's at $5.64 a pound, and so it's at $4, and it's at $5.64, and so we're really seeing big moves in all these. And I bet with silver it was $29, and it's really $38 since the start of the year. again, big moves up in the sector, and one of the things that that we're looking at is the stocks have done quite well. I was actually working for some reason we're having trouble pulling the Bloomberg up here on the computer this morning, but if you look at the stocks, if you look at things like Nvidia, if you look at the tech stocks, they haven't gone. Many of them are up. Some of them are actually down year to date, and for instance, if you look at Apple, Apple is down year to date, and Google is down year to date. Microsoft is actually up, but they're not doing as well as the gold and the silver stocks. Many of the gold and the silver stocks are up 40, 50, 60, 70, 80% or more. And it's really been the best performing sector. And looking at the earnings, I think they're still struggling to keep up with these earnings on these companies. Again, there seems to be a huge shift in the world. The dollar has had the worst start in decades. It went from about 110 to 97 from the top. If you look at interest rates are going up. Bitcoin, the cryptos have gone up, but there's been a constant bid in gold, and now it's starting to really roll into silver. It's rolled into platinum. It's rolled into copper, where people around the world are scrambling for commodities, as we talked about. Because remember, there's an endless supply of money in the world. There's a limited supply of gold. There's a limited supply of copper. It limits the supply of silver. A number of these things, particularly the copper and the silver, aluminum, there's huge demand for electric cars. There's huge demand for defense, for airplanes and defense products. There's huge demand for solar power. There's huge demand for wind power. All of these things use gigantic amounts of these commodities in their limits of supply. And so we continue to sit and think that's a good way to go. And one of the strategies that Max Out Savings Advisors has been into that, because we're looking at this money printing. The question is, will they get it under control? If they don't, we're going to have a hyperinflation. That's going to be a pretty good place to be. Let's say Donald Trump is successful. Okay, and we don't get the inflation, the economy does well. There's going to be massive demand for all these metals to bring these manufacturing lines on, onto capacity. There's going to be huge demand for military equipment for them. They're still going to have wind and solar all over the world. They're still having the electrification of cars. They require a lot more of these metals. And so it's almost a win-win. And I think, and again, in the world today, this morning, Donald Trump put a 30% tariff on Mexico and the EU. They're still fighting back and forth. We live in a very unstable world. 3 weeks ago, we had war with Iran. And we actually had to sit there and use our highest value weapon systems to take out their nuclear stuff. Again, a very unstable world with multiple potential outcomes. Long-term listeners of this show know that we've been right on point on many of these issues. On this show, we sat there, and I want to say late October, maybe first week in November in 2007, we announced on the show that we expected Lehman Brothers to fail in the near future because their balance sheets were going to destabilize. And then we put in a Max Out Savings report, which we send out free. Just go to the website, maxoutsavings.com. We explained that we showed you the balance sheets, and we're showing that, look, in the last 9 months, they've grown these balance sheets 35%, I think was the number, and or 30%. And there's no way they're going to lose funding in the market, and the thing will destabilize, and that's what happened. So we're very good at dealing with these very complex issues. And in this case, there's multiple potential outcomes. Because what's China going to do? Is China going to invade Taiwan? Is China going to sit there and retaliate? Are we going to work with China? What's going to happen in the EU? Are the manufacturing plants going to come back to the United States? Can we get our deficits under control? Can we keep the economy going and then grow our way out of it? There's a lot of multiple outcomes, and a lot of people want the United States to fail in the world. The Chinese aren't happy with us. The globalists, the Davos crowd wants Trump ruined, and so if they can somehow sabotage the United States, look at Mark Carney in Canada, they're going to try to do it, and so we're still the best and the brightest in the world. We're going to navigate through this, but it's going to be more challenging, and there's going to be more multiple outcomes. So in that world, what you do is you spread out your risk, as we talked about, just being in the S&P 500 and 60% of your money and then 40% in bonds, like many of these groups are, and piled in all the same stuff. Everything goes up and everything goes down at the same time, and things can go against you pretty quickly. We've looked at a lot of accounts come in. The people have no way, if the market starts going down or something, to protect the accounts. They just are staying in and hoping for the best, and hope is not a good strategy. Whereas you diversify, if you're in stocks, if you're in the precious metals, the mining, the commodities area, if you're in shorter term bonds, you can pick up 4% with no risk right now there. If you're in foreign stocks, if you're in different things, they're going to make money. We looked at investment in the timber area. We made. Timber was horrible this year. They had hurricanes last year that knocked over a lot of timber in the Southwest or Southeast, and so they had to go cut the timber that's on the ground, so it flooded the market with timber, and plus housing's not doing well. It creates an opportunity. If inflation takes off, the timber grows about 7% a year, so the timber becomes 7% more valuable every year, and it goes up with inflation, and you get income while you wait. Again, different asset classes, different areas, in fighting for multiple outcomes, so you ride through whatever's going to come your way and to protect your retirement, and that's going to be the key. And I think we're going to continue to see these issues come about. It's going to be interesting. Just have a sip of coffee here, and. So the Big Beautiful Bill came out. They pushed through some. So the one thing I didn't like about the Big Beautiful Bill that we talked about earlier in the show really was the spending was more than I really wanted. The senators got in there and had to get there. They increased spending about $1 trillion, which is very upsetting. But hopefully we'll see some things out. One of the more interesting things in it was they've increased the level of 1099s to give a 1099 from $600 to $2,000, and this was important because some people are selling something on eBay or Craigslist, and in theory they would have to be issuing 1099s all over the place, and it was just kind of getting ridiculous. As we talked about earlier in the show, one of the things that really jumped out in the Big Beautiful Bill is so many of these things, such as no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, the $6,000 bonus deduction for people over the age 65, they're phasing out at higher income levels. And this is something we talked about the importance of as you're a retiree of for particularly wealthier retirees, to manage your income and have your retirement savings in the proper kind of buckets. So you have oftentimes people think of buckets of short-term money, long-term money. That's not just it. It also should be in tax money that if you need it gets taxed, creates a tax situation, and tax-free money, not money that if you use it will not be taxed. So if you pull money out of your IRA rollover, if you take out $10,000 from your IRA rollover for a car payment, that creates a $10,000 hit on your income. Your income increases. Where if you take $10,000 out of your checking account, there's no tax situation with that. Now, normally it would be like, well, I need the money and it's grown tax free. Fine, But what you want to understand is once you hit certain levels, it's going to trigger higher Medicaid costs. It could affect if you're working your tax-free tips. If you're working overtime, your tax-free, you could lose your $6,500 deduction. And so all of these things are going to make it more important than ever to manage your retirement income. And again, what we really particularly see this is people retiring from, say, a big oil company or something, an Exxon, or so they come in, they got $2.5 million in an IRA, and then you look over in the checking account, and we've seen some of them have like $15,000 in there, and they're like, well, I need money, I pull it out. Well, yes, that's not a bad idea, but understand sometimes retirement is a 20, 25-year deal. I was just on the phone yesterday actually and they asked, well, how old is this account? And it was actually for a very old account that came out of Shell. And I'm like, I think this thing might be 25 years old or 30 years old. We have no idea how old it is. And so in that world, you don't know when you're going to need money, so you want to prepare ahead of time. Anyway, a number of good things happening here. Trump has a plan. He's bringing that manufacturing back. And remember, China grew for 25, 30 years with virtually no recessions because they kept taking our manufacturing. So we can take it back and grow our country. We can also cut our inflation and we can get things better, but it's going to take some time to work. We're going to write about all this stuff, write about the big, beautiful bill in the Max Out Savings Report. We send it out once a month, completely free. We don't bother you. Just go to maxoutsavings.com. And if you need help with your retirement managing it, that's what we do at Max Out Savings Advisors. We're value investors in the stock and bond markets, and we'll manage your retirement for you using Charles Schwab, the custodian of the assets. If you need some help, I'd like to help you out. Just go to maxoutsavings.com. You can get the phone number and call us and request an appointment. It's maxoutsavings.com, but at least sign up for that free report. And remember our motto and philosophy, which is to save aggressively and invest conservatively. Save aggressively, invest conservatively. That, my friends, is the key to building up wealth over the long term. You want to keep sticking with the base. Investing and saving and building wealth is all about the basics. You just keep doing the basics. You aggressively save money. You conservatively invest it. You watch your expenses and your costs, and you'll get ahead in the world. And that's the key. Anyway, I hope everyone has a great weekend, and we'll see you next week right here on the Max Out Savings Show.
This has been the Max Out Savings Show with Ted Gioka, a presentation of Max Out Savings Advisors. Join us next Saturday at 10 a.m. for the Max Out Savings Show with Ted Gioka on AM 1070. The Answer.
AM 1070 and FM 103.3. The Answer.